Mag ik geluid? Mag ik geluid? Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. First, there is a program announcement. On the first day of the conference, we unfortunately had to cancel the anonymous speech about anonymous versus Scientology. There are a couple of more anonymous people here, and they decided to sort of slam together a lecture. The iPhone talk at 7 o'clock at the Monty Hall is cancelled, and that is being replaced, not because of that, but that gave Anonymous a slot to present their sort of quick and fast lecture. So 7 o'clock in the Monty Hall, there is a talk about Scientology and Anonymous, and I hope you all come. Today, I have a really, really happy announcement. In 1999, we started Bits of Freedom, funded by lots of money from one of the starters of Access for All, Philippe Rodriguez. The first employee was Maurice Wessling, who's over there somewhere. Maurice. Then 2 years later, Shura Nas joined him. Shura, there. Two people working really their asses off to protect digital rights online, and more digital rights offline as well, because since the whole world is getting digitized, all these questions, all these matters, all these procedures apply on the online world more and more. Two people working their asses off, never being sure whether they would still be able to be paid the next year. There never was enough money. Funding was always a really, really big problem. And at one point, we had a really unfortunate coalition of, happenstance. Both of the people working at Bits of Freedom were leaving. One already had a job, another one was all of them getting really, really tired. I was supposed to be the chair. I was supposed to be the CEO interim. I got cancer. Suddenly there was nothing. So in 2006, we had to stop Bits of Freedom. We kept the name, wanting to protect it, wanting also to keep open our options to perhaps find new funding, perhaps start once over again. A year and a half ago we tried, we had ideas, we didn't have money. And then suddenly, April this year, one of the people who had been working at Bits of Freedom as a volunteer, and who by then switched to being a full-time lawyer at a really, really prestigious firm, got really bored with all the corporate stuff and thought, fuck, I worked at Bits of Freedom, that was real fun. And he started talking with people, and in April this year, we had a 50-page document of what he wanted to do with Bits of Freedom. The document was so good that he was able to get money for 3 years from Internet for All. He's going to start, as of now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great relief and immense pleasure that I can say Bits of Freedom is back online.
Thank you, Karin. Digital technologies developed in the past decades carry within them great promise. Let me tell you about my first encounter with that promise. It must have been 1994 or 1995. It must have been a 14K4 modem. My family and I were no early adapters, but for most people, those were the first days of the internet. Those were the days that coffee machines made headlines. Those were the days that playing chess over the internet with some guy from Japan you never met was something you told to your friends at high school. Those were the days that a single line of ASCII or a floppy disk could mean the world to you. Those days are long gone, but the promise of digital technologies made a lasting impression on me. Everyone could start its own website and publish it to the world. You were no longer dependent on the goodwill of corporations to create new software or to connect with your friends. Digital technologies gave each individual powerful tools to participate in a global community. Meanwhile, security experts, Aware of the privacy risks associated with these technologies, developed technologies to be able to enjoy the privacy we enjoyed in the analog days, also in the digital days. And as is coming with revolutions, people struggled to keep up. New laws were extended. Old laws were created. Old laws were extended. New corporations used the internet to their advantage. Old corporations couldn't keep up and struggled to survive. The Dutch government at that time also tried to determine its position. After careful deliberation, it formulated in 1998 a central principle for thinking about how we should apply these laws to new online phenomena. The principle read, that which applies offline should apply online. The law, according to the Dutch government, should make no distinction between bits and bricks. No distinction between the physical and the virtual. No distinction between the analog and the digital. It led to much resistance. It was feared that the restrictions of the offline world were transposed to the online world. It was feared that the promise of freedom was clipped at the wings. This was the time Bits of Freedom started. Under the lead of Maurice and Shura, Bits of Freedom fought hard to ensure that this promise of freedom did not turn into a threat of control. But as Karin told you, it had to end in 2006. Since then, however, it appears that this already questionable principle is being substituted for something far worse. It appears that the new principle is that which you wouldn't apply offline, we will gladly apply online. Let me go through some of the examples we encountered since Bits of Freedom closed its doors. Let me start with databases. Huge databases. Database being built at enormous speed, containing highly private and sensitive information, while the security is questionable, while the legitimacy is questionable, while the need, therefore, is even more questionable. Telecommunications data. Dutch internet providers have to retain traffic, collect traffic data and location data of all subscribers for a period of 6 months for internet traffic and for a period of 12 months for normal traffic. For other types of traffic. Now, mind you, the minister initially wanted to use a retention period of 18 months, but after resistance, he caved in. Now, let's reverse this logic for once and ask ourselves, what would happen if we would apply this online legislation to the offline world? It would be simply unthinkable if the postal office would be obliged by the government to keep a record of all senders and recipients of snail mail, and do so for a period of 18 months. Second example, transport data. This year we saw the introduction of the OV chip card. It allows public transport companies to register all movements of Dutch citizens via public transport. These are then stored in a digital database. Meanwhile, it is known for already 1 year that the security is broken and it cannot be fixed. Now, would it be acceptable if someone were to constantly sit next to you while you were taking a train, holding a notebook, registering your every movement, and finally storing this notebook in a safe of which we know it is not secure? Third example, this, by the way, I found on the internet. It was not something I illegally grabbed from someone. It was on Flickr, even published under a Creative Commons license. The Dutch government recently not only introduced the obligation to use fingerprint data in the passport, but it also seized that opportunity to create a gigantic database containing those fingerprints and use them not only to check the authenticity of the passport, but also for criminal and investigative purposes. Now, what would happen if we were to queue all before the police office, waiting patiently while we can then put our thumb in blueprint and put it in a file which is stored later for later use against us. It is not surprising that various experts, including the Dutch Data Protection Authority, concluded that a central fingerprint database in general, and this multi-purpose database in particular, seriously infringe the right to privacy. Now, of course, it would be a waste of tax money if all this data was not put to good use. You can rest assured, and let me give you one example. The CIOT, or the Central Information Point for Telecommunication Investigations, is the investigative clearinghouse for telecommunication subscriber data in the Netherlands. For example, if the police comes across an email address and wants to know the person behind that address, it goes to CIOT and requests them to provide the real name of that subscriber. Now, most of the Dutch in this room will probably already know, but for those who don't know, how often does the CIOT receive such a request per month? Someone has an idea? 2,000. Some more? 250,000 requests per month. Now again, let's apply this example offline. Would it be acceptable if 250 Dutch citizens per month received a request from the police to identify themselves? All in all, I'm really concerned about the digital collection fever of the Dutch government. I'm surprised how little the right to privacy is respected. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for using digital technology to improve our lives. But the private data which is collected needs to be as minimal as possible. The need, therefore, needs to be clear, and the security has to be excellent. And it's not only databases that I'm concerned about. Simultaneously, the openness and freedom of digital technology, the promise I just talked about, and the internet in particular is still under siege. In the Netherlands, over 85% of all households have internet access. Digital technologies are becoming more pervasive and more important. Creative content is amazing. Blogs, wikis, mashups. Innovation shows no signs of abating. The free software movement creates software which is even better than what proprietary companies make, and they give the user more freedom. Information available online has exploded. Music, books, academic literature, everything is available at your own fingertips in your own house. It is not surprising then that the French Constitutional Court very recently confirmed that the internet connection is part of the right to freedom of communication. Nevertheless, powerful lobbies still attempt to gain control over this, one of the most efficient and one of the most open communication channels in the world. Rights holders are promoting the idea of disconnecting users from the internet, as we all know. Filtering and zoning technologies are becoming more pervasive in the Netherlands. For example, Brein has indicated that it's considering requesting internet service providers to block traffic from torrent sites. And the principle that internet providers should not discriminate between different types of content is a subject of the heated debate. These are also troubling developments. They all stand in the way of an open and free internet which is accessible to all. The fundamental right of freedom of communication is also in need of defense. So let's take stock. What has come of this principle? That which applies offline should also apply online. As it turns out, it resulted in the worst of both worlds. Far-reaching restrictions from the offline world are imposed on the online world, while the civil liberties that are applicable to all realms of human behavior are not being applied in the digital realm. That is why Bits of Freedom is back online, to try to ensure the fundamental rights of each citizen enjoys in all spheres of activity, he will also enjoy in the digital world. Now, what will we do? The two themes I set out before will be central to our first campaigns. Privacy infringing database on the one hand, an open and free internet on the other hand. We have organized 2 small workshops tomorrow at 2 and 3, and you are more welcome to participate. We also have some very limited edition t-shirts that we can give away. Second, how will we do that? We will primarily work on influencing government policy and self-regulation. To this end, we will try to introduce specific legislative proposals aimed at safeguarding these fundamental rights. We will also develop websites which should become a focal point for the campaigns mentioned before. And we will, of course, continue organizing the Big Brother Awards, which have already been organized in the past. We will do our work in the Netherlands, but we will also make our voice heard at the European level. Where possible, we will work together with other digital rights organizations, such as HAR or other digital rights organizations associated with HAR. We will again start sending out our bi-weekly newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to the mailing list, you can do so now at bof.nl. Our Twitter account is Bits of Freedom. We will have a full-time staff. Check our newsletter for vacancies if you're interested. And most importantly, we will need your help. Every contribution, and I think that in-kind contributions are as valuable as financial contributions, is appreciated. So if you want to do something, you can contact us and we're open to your help. So before I conclude, let me say some words of thanks. Firstly, thank you Shura, thank you Maurice and the former board of directors for their work in the past years. I would also like to thank the Foundation Internet for All, who is making this possible and providing a substantial grant which allows us to start a professional and serious organization. Thank you, Doke, for taking the lead in that. And lastly, I would like to thank the current board of directors for preparing the new relaunch of Bits of Freedom. Joris, thank you for playing a pivotal role in that. And let me then conclude. Digital technologies still carry within them a great promise. It is a promise of emancipation and freedom, individual freedom. It is a promise of imagination and creativity. It is a promise that each of us can live up to its full potential without undue restriction by government and without undue restriction by corporations. Let us make that promise come true, and let us make bits of freedom into megabytes of freedom. Thank you. Thank you. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free. Sure, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Zimmerman from La Quadrature du Net, and I
Nice to meet
mostly wanted to say welcome back to you.
Thank you.
As you know, we were quite active on the Adopi law in France and the telecoms package in Europe. We'll talk about this on Sunday if you want on the Hack the Law talk.
Yep.
There's this workshop afterwards where we can synchronize our action on a European level, and
Yep.
I just wanted to pinpoint here two major objectives that are coming, and our fellow Dutch people might like to get active on this, which is the third reading of the telecoms package that will begin by the end of September, early October, where network neutrality and discrimination will be at stake. And afterwards is already on the tracks a European directive about protecting the children online, which include very disturbing propositions about filtering child pornography, filtering of content on the internet. So we'll have to be together very active and watchful on those topics.
Yeah, well, very important, and let's try and work together. Thanks. Other comments or questions? Well, you can email me. Or you can drop by at the workshop or just give us a call, or whichever way you would like to contact us. We are open to all your suggestions or your help. And if you want to contribute, feel free. Thank you.